Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of the 107 podcast with myself and Ash. I would carry on, but we do actually have two guests with us. And this week we are joined by Terry and Matt, who both are part of the Fans Talk F1 podcast and are reasonably popular on TikTok as well, which is pretty cool. But I will let them both introduce yourselves. Why don't you go first, Terry?
So I'm Terry. Most people know me as the F1 Coffee Corner from my TikTok page. Started it, coming to a 1 year anniversary actually on TikTok. And I just started delivering daily news in a fast way, quite a simple sort of way of doing it, so that people can get it straight to their inboxes, nicely quick, not a lot of knowledge, and then rapidly with the community and trying to promote a community where fans are welcome no matter how they got into the sport, no matter what their opinions are, and trying an environment where you can actually have a debate, but a healthy debate, and respect people's opinions still, really. So, and obviously TikTok is how myself and Matt met, so I'll let Matt introduce himself, I think.
Yeah, I'm known as F1 Matt, and nobody knows me at all, as you've already pointed out. I won't hold that against you.
I mean, for it to come across like that, I do apologise.
I might just drop it in now and again, but I won't hold it against you, I promise you. Pretty much the same as Terry. Just like TikTok as a bit of fun, to be honest.
Yeah.
Posting now and again. And it just kind of exploded from there. As Terry touched on above, we've kind of got to the point now where we've sort of created a little, I say little, it's not massive, but we've got a little TikTok community going. And we all like and share each other's posts and comment on each other's and just support each other and stuff like that. I've recently just started a F1 quiz, so we do that for Friday night as well. So that's getting a little bit more popular as well now. So that's good. It's all good fun.
Yeah, nice. That's actually how I discovered you, not the quiz, but through your F1 lives. I think I came across that randomly. It's a good thing to be on F1 TikTok for sure. I came across that randomly and thought shoot your shot, why not, essentially. And that's obviously how we've all ended up here. But I believe you've also got your own podcast, right? Which is, I know, obviously, you said you met each other via TikTok, but you've then gone on to do your own podcast, which is great.
Yeah, we introduced it where we just do a race debrief after the race, so keeping it nice and simple, fits in with the calendar, and we just wanted something that was a bit different. So we actually recorded it live on TikTok, and we do it so that it's completely live before it gets edited, but there's fan interaction, so people can hop in there, they can put the questions in there, they can kind of shape the debate on it, they can put their point of view in, we can discuss it. So it's just a slightly different way of doing it, I'd say. And I think by keeping it to the races, it keeps it quite fresh. Did you say, Matt?
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of doing it. Like, I hadn't seen anyone stream, live, record, chuck it up on like Apple Podcasts or anything like that. So it's like very unique, essentially. So I'm a big fan of that as well. Like, so much like community interaction, and I guess it's good. Obviously, you both have like a decent following as well, like individually, which makes it a lot easier to get people's questions in and stuff like that, which is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the whole point. You just try and build on that community, but do something a bit different. So even though it gets edited when it goes on there, it's filmed live. So obviously, there's some bits like the outtakes we disappear. Obviously, you don't want to hear that in the car, do you, at the end of the day? But it's good fun, and it's good engagement as well. It's really good to actually be speaking to other people as well, and it's not scripted that way as well, which was one thing we were really keen on, it not being a scripted podcast, because when it's even a bit polished sometimes, I'd say.
It does come with its risks and rewards, though, doesn't it? I mean, the challenges we've had in terms of setting up each of the sounds and stuff like that. Like Terry said, trying to edit it in the background is an absolute nightmare. But I think it's like you said, it's a little bit of a niche. There isn't anybody else doing it, so to speak, at the moment. And it helps us as well that if we're talking, so like last week, for example, we did a reverse grid. So it helps us to dip in. And rather than us just babbling on and on and on, we'll dip in and we'll pull some of the comments up and we'll start talking about what people want to hear. So I think that's a good side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like I said, never sort of seen that before. I know that there's like one where they do like race watch-alongs, I think with like Tomo F1 and that sort of stuff. But that's the only similar thing that I'd seen like within the world of F1, to be completely honest. So yeah, it's pretty good. So I do have a couple of questions, like just to, see where opinions may be crossed, and then normal questions, nothing ridiculous, and then we'll get on to like the triple header coming up, and some of the bits and pieces as well. But so I'll start off with, who is the greatest of all time for both of you?
Well,
Because
straight in there.
Mine's Ayrton Senna. I grew up watching Senna, and we were obviously robbed of the true comparisons with obviously what happened. Pretty poignant considering where we're going this weekend. But for me, it's Senna. He was a pure racer. He just at the time just gave everything. So I think statistics will point towards other people, but that's my pick still.
Yeah, I think we spoke about it last week on the podcast. It's like, I think that's one of the biggest what ifs in Formula One history is, what if he didn't crash or survive the crash or whatever? Like how successful would he have been had he carried on for another 10 years or however long he carried on for? I think that there would have been different records to break now for Hamilton or Max or whoever. So
I'm a little bit different. So I'm a little bit of a generational fan. So I look at it on. I'm not quite as old as Terry. Make of that what you will. I do apologise to airing you right on the podcast. But I look at it as generational. So for me, my generation, my GOAT would have to be Lewis Hamilton. But that doesn't stop me from, idolising other people like Senna, Schumacher, alike. Because you can be a GOAT of a generation, I believe. But yeah, there's many out there. There's many out there.
Yeah, I think we've said again something very similar in terms of like the generations of cars and the generations of drivers are so different. It's always very hard to compare, especially with like something as simple as just the engines changing, let alone like the full regulations. It's always stupidly difficult, essentially. For record, mine Schumacher. And Ash, whose was yours? I can't remember off the top of my head.
No, I think we said our favourites, because I said Gilles Villeneuve was my favourite driver, but the GOAT for me is Michael Schumacher.
That's a good answer. Very biased, but
I'm glad we've all disagreed on who the GOAT is.
Oh yeah, that's a great start, isn't it? Yeah,
great edit on it, isn't
it? I just think Schumacher raised the game when he brought in fitness, when he just brought in just pounding the car out, testing, just getting the maximum out of it. And I think if you can do it across multiple cars and multiple teams, that's at least a baseline for being one of the greatest. So with Max, until he moves to another team, I don't think he can ever be in the greatest of all time debate unless he wins with another team.
I mean, you say that, but he's probably going to retire at the end of his Red Bull contract. So, I mean, we may never know, which would be sad to see, but and then speaking of drivers on the grid, I'm going to go to you first, Matt. Who is your favourite driver on the grid at the moment? I have a funny feeling you're going to say Hamilton after the last question.
It is going to be Hamilton. But that's like I say, that's my generation. So at the moment, Hamilton's my generational GOAT. But that doesn't stop me liking George. I like Leclerc, Sainz, so on and so forth. So I'm not, I am a dedicated, hardcore Hamilton ultra. But I do like to see others achieve as well.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned George there very, very briefly. Do you think that Hamilton's going to start coming back at George this season? Obviously, with how the results have differed and stuff like that, how do you think the inter-team sort of results are going to be?
I do, but then maybe I'm biased. But then you also look at last year, don't you? And you think to yourself, well, I mean, we don't know the true ins and outs of what Lewis was testing and what he wasn't testing. Yeah. Does that play into it? Doesn't play into it? We can only go by what we read in the press.
Yeah, I mean, we have Imola coming up this week. It is race week. And obviously year before, yes. Obviously, Max overtook and literally lapped Hamilton this time last year, which is just mad to think about. So it's going to also be very interesting to see where those Merc upgrades manage to put them on the grid as well. But and then Terry, favorite driver on the grid at the moment?
Mine's same as Matt. I'm a Lewis fan. First and foremost, I think for not only what he's achieved, but what he's done for the sport. going back to what I said about Schumacher, I think Lewis is in that category of what he's brought to the sport and outside of the sport and what he's done with his profile. I think his reach is much further than Formula One, alongside the achievements as well. So, but I do think that we're now in a position where there's a lot of great drivers on the grid. Yeah, like Matt said, and I think if we talk about generational eras, it kind of feels like we're now coming into the Max era.
Yeah,
and I think we are seeing that changeover, that change of the guards as such.
Yeah, I think you're bang on, to be completely honest. I think that, like you said, Lewis has essentially transcended Formula One. Like he's almost as big as the sport itself, which is absolutely mad when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, he's some would say he's even bigger, wouldn't they? I know,
yeah,
might be an unpopular opinion, but for one driver to have more followers than what Formula One has on Instagram and
pretty sure,
and things like that, it's pretty mad to think about all of that, and to think of the star status he still commands, even the troubles that Mercedes have had, and you still see races. I can guarantee that 9 out of 10 fans will be running to get a picture, an autograph, or something with Lewis if he walked through a paddock with a bunch of drivers. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
But listen. Look at the impact he had when he went radio silence. So he went radio silence at the end of a certain year, didn't he? And look at the turmoil that caused on the whole of F1 and the community alone.
And then the comeback was just immense, wasn't it? That one post of him stood over the Grand Canyon,
exploded,
exploded everything, didn't it? With the I am back sort of thing.
I think the thing is, he's become worldwide. By worldwide, I kind of count America. That's where without Drive to Survive, whereas Drive to Survive has brought in a lot of American fans who, Chuck Leclerc, I think is a name that went around. And people know George and Carlos a lot more, but he was big there before Formula One really took off. I think it goes to show like his impact, and I know they're kind of greats, but like Ali and Jordan, they've transcended the sport, and that's what he's done as well.
Yeah, absolutely bang on. We'll jump on very quickly to favourite circuits you're looking forward to this year. Of this calendar year, we won't name circuits that aren't on the calendar anymore.
Personally, I'm looking forward to Silverstone because it's actually the first time I'm going to a Grand Prix. So for me, there's like the heritage of Silverstone. The fact that I just one of things. In terms of what we can expect from Formula One, I'm excited for Vegas, not necessarily as a racetrack, more as a spectacle. I'd say as a fan, I'm quite intrigued to see what America does with Las Vegas and that weekend. But I don't think it's going to be a great race looking at the track.
No, I think you're right. I think if we look at the stuff that went down during Miami, I think Vegas is going to try and top that. So it's going to be very interesting to see how bad / good / strange the entire weekend is going to be.
Cringe. I think cringe.
I think is the word. Yeah.
It's gonna be an emotional weekend.
It's going to be
from
so
start
weird.
to finish.
Yeah.
Those jackets are going to be out today,
Yeah, exactly.
Mine, I'd probably have to go a little bit different. I do like Silverstone. I am looking forward to it. Same as Terry. I am going to Silverstone this year.
Nice.
But I'd probably say Red Bull Ring for me.
Yeah, that was that was technically my second Grand Prix, and it's got a special place in my heart. First full race that I saw, technically.
Yeah.
I was at Belgium in 2021. So I think we all know how well that went. So Belgium can jog on as far as I'm concerned.
We won't talk about that.
No, please don't. I genuinely have PTSD. It was one of the worst days in the history of days, honestly. And then for some reason I decided it would be a great idea to think about booking tickets this year, and for some reason I didn't, which is very, very good. I think that was my first race as well, was in Belgium, and then first proper race where we actually saw proper racing was Austria with Ash. We did like a road trip last year in the summer, which was brilliant, to be honest.
I'd love to go. I mean, it's one of them tracks when you look at it, you actually don't realise the difference in levels.
It's insane.
It is literally insane, and it is such a simplistic track to actually look at from an aerial point of view, but it offers so much more. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's genuinely a really fun track, and I guess I don't know if either of you two do any like sim racing or like even just with a controller, just on F1 games or anything like that, but it's also a really fun track to drive as well.
It is. I'm still an old-fashioned controller person. Matt's so old-fashioned he hasn't discovered PlayStation yet.
Well, I used to have the steering wheel and the setup and that, but I've given my son now because I just don't play it anymore.
Yeah,
it's just.
Is that what it would say, Ego?
I'll be honest, it's become too hard. I'm not even ashamed to admit it.
Fair enough. It's completely fair enough.
Can I ask, how did you both get into Formula One?
Do you want to go first, Matt? Or,
you're older.
Generational thing. Literally sat with my dad watching football. My dad's a huge Formula One fan. And when we grew up, that's what we used to do on a Sunday. We just sit there, watch it. It used to be our sort of time. We used to watch that, and then a bit of NFL when sort of Channel 4, BBC has the rights there. So,
nice.
And then just followed it on really, as I got older. So, yeah, it's always been a part of my family, my upbringing, I suppose. So,
nice.
Yeah, mine's a little bit different. So I haven't got any family that are into F1 other than the wife. But mine was, I watched a lot of sport. Even if it's something that doesn't interest me, I'll have it on in the background.
Yeah.
And it started off with F1 like that for me. So painstakingly for me, like Schumacher's era and stuff like that, was always on in the background.
Yeah.
But I never took major notice of it, if that makes sense. And I suppose when Lewis popped up on the scene and started making a name for himself, I started to take a bit more interest in it. So I'd probably say Lewis's beginning of Lewis era was my mainstay within F1.
Yeah, I have pretty much the exact same answer as you, Matt. Like it literally, I remember. I think it was my gran. She was like, "Oh, have you heard like this kid's come into Formula One and like just done absolutely amazing." I can't even remember what she said, but she brought it to my attention, and it was Lewis's debut season in McLaren, and that's how I got started as well. So I guess a very similar sort of story to you. I have a very quick follow up question as well. You said that your wife's interested in Formula One. Did you get her interested in? Was she previously interested in F1?
I got her into it.
You converted her.
But she won't tell you that, though.
You see, my wife's the opposite. doesn't even want to watch it.
Well, funny, my interest is the same as yours, Terry. So my dad got me into it kind of in the 2000s with Schumacher and a young Fernando Alonso coming up. And I was like, oh, that's the guy I'm going to support, because he's dethroning the king.
Yeah,
and then he kind of grew out of love with the sport, and his hybrid era came in, and I kind of grew more into it. So yeah, it's funny how we kind of aligned each other on how we got into the sport.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's always interesting finding out like how on earth people manage to watch cars go around in circles every weekend. Like it's just a silly simple concept, but it's insane. And everyone's story is like similar but different as well. And then speaking of circles, if you had to drop a race from the calendar, which one would it be, and why is it Qatar? just a straight question, really. I don't know why it wouldn't be.
No influencing, Jake.
No influence. Sorry. Which circuit, Qatar, would you drop?
I'm about to break your podcast for you, and I'm about to upset quite a lot of people.
Oh no!
Because I have a little bit of controversy on this, and Terry knows me well that I am the controversial one out of the two. I'm going to say Monaco.
Yes.
Just simply because. Look, I love the idea of Monaco. I love the heritage of it. I love the background. I love everything that goes into a race weekend with Monaco. However, you qualify first, and all being the weather aside, and pit stops, as we've seen over the years, you qualify first, you finish in first.
Yeah, I totally agree with you.
It's just not.
The amount of people that call it a procession, not a race, is. Yeah, I've lost count. And I totally get what you're saying. It's a great event. Qualifying brings out the best of the best in the drivers, and it's Monaco, and it's got heritage. But as a pure race, it's not a race.
It's funny you mention that, but the most important part of Monaco weekend, the most bit that you get most excited for is Saturday qualifying.
Yeah.
And then it comes to the Sunday, and you're like, ooh, bit of a snooze fest again.
Maybe they should make it a sprint race.
Don't start. Don't give them ideas they don't need, please.
Reverse grid. Monaco.
Could you imagine?
Yeah, Logan Sargent would probably bin it into the wall within 3 corners at the front of that. But I guess it's also frustrating for Monaco because you had Formula E there this weekend, and there were so many overtakes. It was ridiculous. I think there was 160 overtakes during the whole weekend. So it just seems to be a Formula One problem, not a racing problem. So I think you're right. I'm 50-50 to dropping it as well. So I don't think it's that controversial anymore, to be honest with you.
I got a confession, Matt. So I
don't know.
with you on Monaco, mate, actually. Or I was going to chuck Miami in the mix, but you know.
Oh,
yeah, I didn't go Miami just because it's still a little bit new. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the Miami Grand Prix as such. I found it very boring. Again, it's what you look for, isn't it? Spectacle, razzmatazz, a show, yes, but in terms of an actual race, we watched it live at Silverstone and we struggled to recall what happened, and it wasn't because of the cocktails on the rooftop. It was genuinely because, you know, the actual action just wasn't there, and all the overtakes were like a very simple on the straight down into turn one. Nothing really going. No real sort of pit stops, no real action. So I don't know where that played a part in it, but it probably turned me off in the race.
Do you know what made that even worse though for us? We then had to re-watch the same race the next day so that we could do the podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah.
So we didn't watch it once, we watched it twice.
Yeah. So maybe that's playing on my mind a bit. And I even fell asleep during the highlights as well.
It was very procedural, so I do get it, but I think this year the track was better than last year because obviously they fixed that weird turn under a bridge, and they fixed that, but then they reduced the DRS zone weirdly, and then were concerned as to why there wasn't that many overtakes. It just seems a bit counterintuitive, but like it might take a few years to get better. I don't know how long the contract's there for in Miami, actually, to be completely honest.
You need to define a few years.
I think
yeah, good point.
Another thing that plays into it this season is the Red Bull dominance. So if you take Sergio and Max out, races are actually exciting because you've got Mercedes sometimes come up against the Astons and you get a real mix in qualifying, but they're just so far ahead. And as much as you love midfield and battles, it's a fight for the podium positions that really get people excited. And honestly, if Max wasn't qualifying, was it 9th or 8th in Miami? Him and Sergio would have been 1-2.
Yeah.
It was really exciting when he did his first step overtakes, then he did a stint, and he got past Sergio, and it was just like, we just watched Max race kind of thing. Yeah. Everyone else was just in a procession.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, I thought the first 10, 15 laps were reasonably interesting, and then the final 2, that was it. So I can understand how you would fall asleep during the race. Like, it's perfectly understandable, to be completely honest.
Well, I think going back to Matt's point about Monaco, I think the problem is the cars are just too big. They're too heavy. There's not enough room there. It's become a track which, despite what it brings to the calendar in terms of heritage and everything else, it's just not a good track for racing at all.
I had, being the controversial one that I am again, I had a brilliant idea for Monaco. So if you can't drop Monaco from the season, why not make Monaco where every team has to have one heritage car? Now that team has to drive that heritage car on the Monaco weekend.
Charles Leclerc.
I mean, F1 are looking at ways of mixing stuff up.
It's only got a couple of year contract. We just get it out.
You're not a fan of my idea then, no? I won't pitch it.
To be fair, I think if you're going to mess with any Grand Prix, I think Monaco is probably the one to mess with. Like, in terms of, like, if you want to try, like, Sprint Saturdays or whatever it is, because it has become very procedural. You could try one-stop quali in Monaco, because that might actually mix things up. You could try, like, changing, instead of it being one mandatory pit stop if it's dry, you could try 2, or you must use all 3 tyre compounds or something like that.
Yeah.
That's the weekend where you try and mess around with stuff, not Baku, which, I mean, yeah, great, but also why? So I think I kind of agree with you to a certain extent. But like heritage cars, I mean, what would the rules be for that? Like, could you bring out anything? Is it just
free for all?
Free for all. So you could technically bring out the W11 if you're Mercedes and just roll with that.
I would never allow Mercedes to bring that beast back.
Well, if you has, what are you bringing if you has?
That's a good question.
You know what I mean?
Okay. Well, I'll have to think about this idea a bit more deeply, shall I?
I mean, are they going to borrow one from Ferrari or something? You know what?
Listen, it sounded good on paper, though, didn't it? So we'll leave it at that.
Cut that bit out.
Yeah.
But that was about it for the sort of questions that we did have. Sorry, just very quickly, Terry, did you say you would also drop Monaco, or would you drop a different circuit?
I would drop Monaco, but I think Miami, if it doesn't improve, is one of the ones as well.
Yeah. I agree with that, but at the same time, I have a funny feeling they will try anything to make it work.
Yeah, and I think this is the balance between what F1 get from it from a commercial value and what we get from it from a racing value, isn't it? And I think that's the challenge that we're talking about. Spa potentially dropping off the grid. Yeah, there's some really strong tracks that we've already lost some really good tracks as well. And actually, if you look at the tracks they've been replaced with, I wouldn't say we've got a better quality of racing by going to these new tracks at all. So it's not as if we've brought these new tracks in and gone, actually, fantastic, they're new tracks, they're purpose-built, they allow for overtaking. They don't. So,
Yeah, they turn around and go, no, street circuit in a car park, which isn't a street circuit.
Yeah.
Weren't they talking about Miami at one point? They were talking about trying to make the track go through the stadium at one point, weren't they?
Yeah, they were, yeah. Which is just, I mean,
they've had huge problems. That turn that you were on about, Jacob, earlier, they've had massive problems just getting that little tweak to it because they don't own the road around it. And it's literally, it's as basic as they couldn't change it because they didn't have the rights to change it.
I didn't know that. That's ridiculous. Yeah. That's such a ridiculous problem.
I think it's turn 14, and that's why it's always going to be as shocking as it is, because that's kind of the best they could do with the bit of land they own and the track, which is for someone like Formula 1.
You've got the rights for that corner there. Then you look at the LA strip at the moment, which they've completely ripped up.
Yeah.
And resurfacing it at the cost of something daft like $5 billion or whatever they said it was at the time.
It's amount of money, yeah.
Yeah, but the difference is Las Vegas, they want it to be more respectful because that is Formula 1. They're the promoter for the first time ever. Yeah. It's their money involved. And that's why, going back to what you said earlier about it being an event, it's going to be massive because for them, if they could make that work, then the other promoters are going to be seriously worried about what they want to put in place. Because they'll go with the rule book to say, we can now promote a race, this is what we want from you. And if you don't like it, off you go, and we get someone who can meet that criterion.
Well, Las Vegas is already going to fail because we haven't got Daniel Ricciardo driving it.
So we actually mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. I have a funny feeling he'll have it written into his contract somewhere that he has to do an FP in one of the cars. It seems like the sort of thing that he would ask for.
I think it's the sort of thing they're obliged by, isn't it?
Yeah. It's also from a marketing perspective, that would probably get a hell of a lot of views across social, etc., etc. So like, it even makes sense from like a Red Bull perspective, even if they just say, right, okay, you're going to drive last year's car, go for it. Or they have like an open tire test during like between FP1 and 2 or whatever it is. They'll get him in a seat somehow over the weekend.
Well, you're going to go back to a 2021 car now, aren't you? That you're able to race. So putting him in the 2021 Red Bull, I think that's certainly something feasible they'll be doing in the build up to it. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's going to be insane, regardless of whether or not Danny does actually like race. The whole weekend is going to be ridiculous. And it's also like, it's really weird because the race is on a Saturday night as well, which is a strange thing to have done, but also kind of makes sense.
It makes sense. I mean, I think it makes it easier for viewing as well, doesn't it? From what I can gather, because otherwise they're going into Monday morning, and they didn't really want to commercially do that as well. So, and I think the idea of Saturday night racing in Vegas kind of adds to the spectacle, doesn't it? By having it on a Saturday night rather than the Sunday, 3 p.m. wherever you are in the world, sort of thing. which traditionally what Formula One have liked to have done, isn't it? Apart from obviously night races, but they like that sort of Sunday afternoon start time wherever you are, don't they?
Yeah.
Also, Vegas is super hot, so sitting there at 3 p.m. You're gonna hate it. You're just gonna hate it. So having it in the cooler evening time also just makes sense for the fans as well.
Yeah, true. I hadn't actually thought of that, to be fair. It is a desert, to be honest. So,
I'm a bit worried about the fans who are going to be out all day, though, rocking up at whatever time it is on a Saturday night on the Vegas Strip, watching the Formula One cars, can make for some interesting crowd shots.
Yeah, it could be literally just people completely melting. And the tickets were insane as well. I remember seeing that someone managed to sell somehow a ticket for $1 million. I would expect to be starting on the grid for $1 million. If you're paying $1 million, I'm on the grid.
I want to be on the formation lap for $1 million. Exactly. Never mind on the grid.
That was probably a general admin ticket as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. I also saw they were trying to sell like a fan zone experience ticket, and it was literally just like a big screen, and then almost like Wembley Box Park, where you could just turn up, have some food and stuff like that, but you pay to get in, and it was like $300 for just the Saturday night. Like how? Yeah, it just seems an absolutely insane concept.
That's a lot more feasible than the actual ticket prices, though.
Yeah, true. So, I mean, there is that. So, but like,
where do we find them tickets?
I'm sure somebody, if you've got money to spend, I'm sure somebody will find you a ticket for that weekend for sure. But so also, you both mentioned that you're going to Silverstone this year. Is that correct?
Yeah,
we are. Yeah.
Nice. Whereabouts are you?
I'm doing it differently this year. So I went 3 years ago and sat in Cops.
Nice.
This year I'm going general, so I'm free roaming.
Nice.
So it's going to be a little bit different, but I personally think it's going to allow me to do a little bit more creative content.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
So do a bit of roaming, do a bit of content creating and stuff like that while I'm out there. Just see where the day takes us. I'll probably end up getting up at like 2 o'clock in the morning to sit on some bank. To save me spot, but it is what it is. It's got to be done.
It's terrible. See, I'm completely different to Matt because there's no way I'm camping. I'm going down for race day, on Cops, job done, get out of the race afterwards. That's it. I can't go pitching a piece of grass at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's not my thing at all. But
I'll be honest. I'm going to struggle because I don't do camping. So
yeah, best of luck with that.
Yeah, so while Matt's 3 days in the tent, I'm just going to rock up after a nice shower in the morning, nice breakfast, cost on the way down.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, I'll bring him up and see how he's going.
Yeah, I remember so Ash and I bought general admission for Austria, and that was interesting, wasn't it, Ash?
I'm not going back to general again. I've done my general experience. I've done the grandstand, and I know which one I prefer.
Yeah, we were completely gassed by orange smoke, and it was ridiculously hot as well. And although we took camping chairs, half the time there was nowhere to put them because people had literally been there since like 3 a.m. just waiting to get the perfect seat. It was absolutely mad, but also like kind of fair play, I guess, if that's what you want to do. But no thanks. I'm going this year and I bought a seat. I'm not messing around with general admission again. I can't. I can't. So best of luck in general admission. I wish you the best of luck.
We'll come back to that one.
Before you book your tickets.
Well, I've done seating. I've been there. I've done seating before. I just didn't think it was. I don't think you get truly connected to the racing. You don't. Whether it was Cops or what. I just didn't feel that was the atmosphere was there, so to speak, at Silverstone. So I just thought I'd do something a little bit different this time year around, and it's cheaper. So it's a win-win.
Yeah, it is quite a bit cheaper as well, isn't it? Like compared to seats.
Oh yes.
Yeah, because
yeah, definitely. I sold a kidney. I bought a ticket for my dad for a Christmas present in time, and the bank's still not recovered.
How easy was it to get tickets? Because it usually sells out like a few weeks after the previous race.
It was the most stressful thing I've ever done in my life. So I went on the Thursday they went live, was on for about 2.5 hours, literally looking at the clock to do the school run, got booted off while I was in the queue. Then they just did the old shut it down, we'll be back at tomorrow.
Yeah.
So went back at the following day, literally had it on laptop, phone, trying to get it on. Got through. By the time I got through, the price had completely changed from where I clicked on to go into. The seat had completely changed from where I got into. I was left with literally, there's 2 seats here. Do you want them or not? And that was it. And I was kind of like, oh, if I don't take them, I ain't going to get a ticket, am I? So they're massively inflated, massively not where I wanted to go from an initial choice. But if I click off this now and say no, I'm fearful that I ain't going to get back in here. So I just kind of took them, which I think a lot of people probably did at the same time.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I mean, I had I have a gamble. I bought a ticket through like a partner, essentially, like a reseller scalping sort of thing, like an actual like ticket distributor. And I'm on national pitch straights, but I have no idea where my seat is. Like, I could be behind the biggest post in the world. I have no idea.
You'll be on the screen.
I'm literally going to turn up on the day and go, this seat is, and then see how it goes. So hopefully it's not terrible. Yeah.
Mine wasn't as bad as yours, Terry, to be honest. I mean, between me and another work colleague that I was with, we were both on the website at the same time. And he went, I've got 3 in the basket. I went, get it done. No, done. And that was it.
Easy, yeah.
Is that because you clicked on general admission?
Yeah, probably.
Probably, yeah. But even they sold out like hotcakes. Literally, they were just going and going and going, weren't they?
That's probably because people didn't realise they were buying it. The way it works out on the tickets. They probably clicked on it and went, where's my seat at the end of it?
Yeah.
On that patch of grass over there on that hill.
But going back to it, I did have to think about my dad as well, going to the first Grand Prix. I didn't think, selling him the idea of turning it with a couple of camping chairs and the pitch of grass was probably the best way to give him his first Formula One experience as a live racer. I thought best play safe, get the grandstand as well.
He'd have loved it. He'd have loved it.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have loved the 2 a.m. wake up call. Like, come on,
wake up call. He would have still been going.
So unfortunately, Silverstone isn't one of the next circuits coming up in this triple header, but we have Imola, Monaco, and Spain coming up. I think moving on, like Imola is going to be reasonably interesting because I know a lot of teams are bringing upgrades to Imola. And I think it's like Mercedes in particular have got like essentially a completely new concept coming, I guess similar to McLaren's sort of upgrade that they had in Baku. I don't know how well it's going to go though. And I think that also FPs won't tell us anything. Like Merck were top of FP2 over the weekend in Miami. Was it 2 or 1? I can't remember.
Yeah, it's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they completely fell apart during the race. Well, I say completely fell apart, but they didn't end up P1 and 2. But it's gonna be interesting for sure. And as far as I can work out, there's a decent chance of rain on Sunday.
So yeah, it's raining all this week in Imola.
Yeah,
and there's a medium chance of rain on Sunday.
Yeah.
Which gets us all excited, but come Sunday, it's not going to rain, don't
No, it'll be the driest day in the world.
Or it'll be in the morning.
But I think with that race, it's going to be interesting to see because I know obviously a lot of teams are going to come with upgrades. It's going to be interesting to see how the grid actually looks, to be completely honest, especially with rain. Plus, we get F2 and F3 back this weekend, which is good. I don't know if either of you pay much attention to F2 or F3 at all.
I pay attention to see what they're doing with the runs and stuff. I don't take the times into sort of gospel because it depends on what they're running, what programs they're going through. But I think you're right to touch on in terms of upgrades. A lot of teams, this is their first time to bring a big upgrade package because of it being the first European race. So even with Miami after the break we had, it's still a flyaway race, and getting parts over there in the current cost cap climate isn't the easiest. So I think a lot of teams have deliberately shelved some development, putting it back onto this weekend. So, AlphaTauri bringing a new floor. You've got the new floors on McLaren. Mercedes are bringing 3/4 of a new car, pretty much. So, I think we'll be seeing a lot of upgrades arriving, and we've also got the new qualifying rules this time around as well. So that's going to make it a little bit more interesting with the mandatory tyre selection. So I think it could throw some stuff into the water.
Yeah, absolutely. It could be complete chaos. I mean, hopefully it kind of is because it makes it more interesting. But at the same time, like nothing ridiculous, like nothing dangerous. Hopefully not. I think. Sorry, go on.
The big thing is Mercedes' upgrades.
Yeah.
And you've got all sides of the spectrum where you've got saying it's a start of an upgrade process. Don't expect us to be up there challenging for podiums. And then you've got the other side, which is it's a really big upgrade and we are going to make a big step and it's going to be the next in a series of upgrades. What do you honestly think? Do you think that they do have something in mind and this is the start of their season? And if it doesn't work and the car is the same, or God forbid it goes backwards, do they abandon this year and say, right, we just have to look at next year now? And do you think that then plays on the mind of someone like Lewis Hamilton? It's like, look, I'm running out of time to get my 8th. He could pretty much walk into any team if there is a seat open. I might think he could go to Ferrari. Do you think he's like, look, it's been 2 years. We're not making any progress. If anything, kind of go backwards with Aston coming forward. What do Mercedes do?
I happen to think, so just briefly on the Lewis situation, I don't see Lewis going anywhere. I think he's going to sign another 2-year deal and that will see him stay at Mercedes. I think there's too many ties between Merck and Lewis, not just as a driver. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes between them pair. It's unbelievable. In terms of the Merck itself, they have got a massive upgrade package coming this weekend. There's going to be quite a few shot faces. So I've been told, or reliably informed, and I won't go into that anymore. My feeling on it is, though, it's not going to be enough to catch that Red Bull. So we've got fans out there that are going, oh, brilliant, they're going to bolt a set of side pods on and this, that, and the other, and they're going to be on the back of the gearbox of the Red Bull. In reality, it's just not going to happen.
No.
But it is a good starting point that will take them through to the end of this season. So you never know what's going to happen when Red Bull's penalty kicks in towards the end of the season. They might get a little bit closer then, but I think they'll be planning on next season primarily with this major upgrade.
So do you see 2023 as...
Yeah. If you're being real, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sitting here now hoping that they're going to bolt on these upgrades and it's going to go bam and we're away. But
so do you think internally in the team, 2023 is the testing season for next?
Yeah, so me and Terry have discussed this quite a lot on the podcast previously. In terms of the W13, I think they've just gone down a rabbit hole and a little bit of stubbornness has crept in with the hierarchy at Mercedes. And they've kind of gone, we've chosen this platform, we've chosen this idea to go down. It's not working, but we're going to make it work. And I think they've now got to the point where they've just got that realisation that we know this isn't going to work. So, but I think they knew that at the start of the season. I think they always knew that at the start of the season, but they were going to continue with it in the plan to bring this, as we call it, a B-spec car.
It's for me, it's slightly different because we know the Mercedes is greatly changed, so we know what parts are coming on it, and like Matt said, it's going to be a very different car. You're talking about the only sort of things that are going to be the same is going to be the chassis it's bolted on and the rear suspension, pretty much, and obviously the engine and gearbox. Apart from that, the rest of it is brand new, which is, literally everything on it: bodywork, front wing, back wing, front suspension, the whole works is being bolted on for it, but. For them, it's about that base platform. So the W14, as it currently is, has got limitations, and they know ultimately you can't win a championship no matter how much you develop that car. Like Matt said, went down a rabbit hole, and no matter how much development you put into it, it ain't going to catch the Red Bull at all. So the come back to the baseline now, the baseline this current spec they're rolling out in Imola is going to be greatly different. Performance would probably be the same, as in being the third fastest car on the grid, chucking about with the Astons and the Ferraris. But the scope to develop it further is massive. Now, a lot of people are saying about this season, if they get it right, second place is game on, and Mercedes will develop the hell out of this car, knowing it's the right concept. So I personally think that it's their do or die for this season. If they've got it wrong, they're in big trouble, if I'm honest. They're ending up coming back from it this year. Yeah, if they roll out this spec, the amount of money, the amount of investment, what they've rolled onto this, if it doesn't work, they're in huge trouble, and they've lost the whole season, and they're going to have to go back to the drawing board. That's how big this is for them. But likewise, if they've got a car that can extract performance to start set there, and we talked about it before, Mercedes been too reactive and not proactive. They can't set up the car. They're going track by track. They can't lower the downforce. They can't hone in on the ride heights. They can't do this whole thing about giving them a stable platform so they can start doing that, and then you can bring the upgrades to it. So they won't want Aston Martin to beat them. They won't want a customer team beating them second place at all with the same engine, same suspension, same gearbox. So they're fully focused. I think that if this works, they expect a fight for second place, which will naturally get them towards first place anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we've got to remember, that if this is right and the wind tunnel correlation is right, because that's what all this is about getting the data matched to wind. They know if they've got that right, which they didn't have last year, they know that the upgrades they're bringing actually work, and they work on the track, because last year the wind tunnel was telling them different data to what the car was telling them on track, and that's where they got caught out, completely with all of the upgrades.
I think the important thing round for this time for Mercedes is they've already got a baseline, so they can already see the Aston.
Yeah.
So I mean, the Aston shares a lot of similarities to the Mercedes itself, so they've already got that, should we say, test dummy car out there. So I don't feel like they're going to go dramatically backwards, and I'm hoping they don't at the same time. But
I think the only issue for me over this weekend, I think regardless, I think they'll still be the third, at worst case, fourth fastest car. Are not all of a sudden going to get lapped by the AlphaTauris, essentially. But my only concern really is, as you sort of said, Terry, is that they're changing so many elements. It might maybe even bring reliability into it if you've never tested all of these elements all at once with each other at the same time on a proper track. I mean, look at it's essentially a test weekend for them. So reliability could be a huge factor as to where they actually finish in the race over the weekend. That's my only concern. But other than that, if they get reliable data out of it and can then come back to, let's be honest, Monaco's a free hit for them. But if they come back to Spain with 2 weekends under their belt of proper testing and making sure that everything's right, who knows?
The other thing you got to remember as well is there's a couple of things. So there is no sort of mix and match in the cars for Imola.
Yeah,
they're both B spec, fully kitted cars. They can't do a comparison. They've already admitted the changes are too big. So they've said that they're both being rolled out FP1 with the new spec as such. Also, Barcelona is the ultimate test track for the teams. If you ask any team where they want to do testing, it's Barcelona. They wouldn't want to go to Bahrain at all, because Barcelona gives them so much data. It's got so much around the high speeds, the low speeds, the drags, the downfalls. They love Barcelona for data. So having that package in place for Barcelona almost is going to be like a mini test for them. Going back to what you're saying, in Barcelona. So Monaco, like you say, get a good qualifying result. You can park any car at the front, as we discussed earlier. If you can get that car on pole or even on the front row, you've got a good chance in Monaco, haven't you? So this one's about, like you say, reliability, get the parts on the car, get out on track. Monaco's about actually, we just do Monaco and see where we shake out like they've done for the first 5 races.
Yeah.
Barcelona is all around, if the wind tunnels told us what it needed to do from Imola, then actually so much data from those 50-odd laps that you're going to get around Barcelona is going to be like a gold one.
What do you think is more important to Mercedes? Going for second and getting the prize money, or kind of admitting we're not there yet? We're going to push every race, but the wind tunnel time for being lower down in the championship is more important to us for next year.
I think Mercedes want to win. I think the prize money is irrelevant now with the cost cap in place. They're financially secure. The top teams, the prize money is irrelevant to the top teams now because of the cost cap. So I think from Mercedes' point of view, they want to show progress, but they want to win on merit, and we're not just talking about the one race like they had in Brazil. They want to be closing the gap, competing, and getting the drivers on the top step so they can say, actually, we're back in this game now. I think that's more important than the wind tunnel than anything, to be honest. And like I say, they won't want to be beaten by a customer car at all. That's not.
No, I mean, me and Terry are fortunate. A couple of weeks ago, we did a tour of Mercedes.
Oh, nice.
We had some really meaningful conversations with certain members of staff there as well. So it opened our eyes up, and it got us thinking about how different teams are. You know, and a comparison me and Terry made, for example, that look at Valtteri Bottas under Mercedes.
Yeah.
Now look at Valtteri Bottas out of Mercedes. So it's a bigger brand. Mercedes have got this bigger brand image, and you have to fit in with that image. And that's the same as the championship. It's win or nothing. But I think this year will be, as Terry alluded to, I think we're pushing for that second place because, I mean, we can all face facts that first is out the realms. But another good thing you've got to mention as well is the season's so long now.
Yeah.
There's so many races still left in this season. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So who knows?
Yeah. I mean, we still have 20 races. 21, technically, which is insane.
And that's it. Red Bull's penalty is going to hit them. Yeah, people are saying it's not. It will, because it will either impact on their development this year, or it will certainly impact on how much they put into next year. At some point, they've got to make that call over when they switch development. And if you've got a Mercedes that's starting to breathe down your neck a bit, and even an Aston Martin that's breathing down your neck, at what point do you make that change? Or what point do you do it and go, do you know what? We need to switch to next year's development. We're not going to have the wind tunnel time. We're not going to have the opportunity to do it. So I think around the summer break, that's going to be real interesting to what Red Bull start doing with upgrades with their cars, to what they start doing. And people will mock what Christian Horner says, but he talks a lot about coming out and getting points early and banking them. You know, he knows.
Talks a lot of sense.
Yeah, and you can read between the lines with a lot of his comments, and he's worried about Mercedes being third place and having extra development time, because bear in mind last year they finished third. So actually, already developing the hell out of their car can help them because they've got that extra time already. So compared to a penalty-stricken Red Bull, and what they've done this year, they haven't actually brought any upgrades to the track in 5 races. It's shocking when you see what they've been coping with. It's literally bolted back together parts, not even a new rear wing. They've been shaving bits off. They've been cost effective on everything they've done, ready for this. So that means they've still got the money in the bank. They've still got the wind tunnel time in the bank. So even though it's a big package, for them, it's almost like pre-season.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
One of the big things to come out of this triple header, apart from Mercedes' upgrade, is Aston, or namely Fernando's chances at winning a race with the high downforce. Do you think he realistically has a chance at winning at Imola, Spain, or Monaco? I know he mentioned Singapore as another race where they could be in a chance. And what are your thoughts on the development they've made from last year to this year, the additional wind tunnel time, and Dan Fallows and his team, and the drive that Lawrence Stroll has? Do they have a car next year that you think can challenge, or do you think they're still maybe 1 or 2 seasons away from being a team that consistently challenges for P1?
Do you want to go, Matt, or do you want me to go? I don't mind.
Do you know what, right? It's one of them things with Aston. We praise Aston so much.
Yeah.
And Aston Martin have got so much right in the past few years. But I think you have to also take this back to Seb's run at Aston as well. And a lot of people overlook that because there's so much that guy would have done for this team and getting it into place where it is now. I think it's really unfair that it gets overlooked. But me and Terry talk on the point that Lawrence Stroll's always had this 5-year plan, and they're actually ahead of the curve now, aren't they? And they've still got so much more to come as well. You know, when they opened the new base at Silverstone, I mean, we had the privilege of looking at it. We haven't been in it yet. I say yet. Aston, if you are watching.
Nobody.
But even just the grand size of it, the sheer size of that building, and how everything's all going to be on one floor. Again, when we went to Mercedes, you kind of underestimate that. There was one of the parts guys, weren't there, Terry, that said something as stupid as putting a bit of tape on a part that then goes to the next department, and then that guy's saying, well, why have you put a bit of tape on it? I've now got to spend time getting that tape off. Whereas I know that sounds silly to say, but when it's all on one floor, you can just shout over to that guy, oh, I've done this, blah, 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 and it just makes everything that little bit. And we're talking at the low end of the scale, so imagine what that's like at the other end of the scale, and that's going to do for Aston. But yeah, I think there's some good times coming for Aston Martin. I really, really do.
Yeah, I mean they've done it the right way. I mean, don't underestimate. I think you said about Lawrence's input. He's made a massive input into that. The investment he's made, but also he's made some key decisions at some right times. So taking Red Bull to court to get Dan Fallows early was, an absolute masterstroke from him in terms of their development. To win that case for him was literally the golden bullet as such for their development and what they've done. I mean, they've made the biggest strides without a shadow of a doubt. I think they're still, like you say, 1 or 2 years away from competing at the top. I think there'd be a lot of teams trying to close that gap quite quick. And I suppose the argument is if they've managed to do it in the cost cap climate in a year, then actually what's to say that someone else can't do that same gap in a year, which is what I think everyone's hoping for. The new factory's just awesome, £240 billion, all of it. New wind tunnel comes in next year. It's a massive project for them. It could only be better for them. And their vibe's been good all season, though. I went to the car launch when they had the fan event in London, and they were talking at this car at the beginning of the season before we even hit the track. And they were confident it was going to do what it was going to do. And, they've known this from the off. And they've got some big upgrades coming. They've got a rear wing where they think they've unlocked the Red Bull style of DRS, which they actually brought to Miami. And they think they found out what it is that's creating that extra speed on the DRS. And if they found that, and it is right, bolting that onto that car, which has been solid all season, again, is going to trouble Mercedes, but also might just bring them back into play a bit. I think Fernando's definitely got a race winning in this season somewhere along the line. Whether it be Imola, Monaco, I'm not too sure, but Matt Silverstone is his hot bet.
Silverstone. Watch this space.
I'm betting Hungary.
Yeah, Mercedes were good there last year, weren't they, to be fair?
Yeah, I'm purely thinking Hungary based on there's always some random winner at Hungary pretty much every single time. So,
but then you could probably say the same with Monaco.
Yeah, true. Yeah. I think Monaco is his best chance out of the next 3 races, but I think that overall, I think Hungary will be very, very interesting to see, like whether or not Alonso does manage to put it P1.
It's interesting what Terry said about the rear window, because apparently Mercedes have cottoned onto that now as well.
Yeah.
And they'll be looking to bring similar. Was it Texas? They said it was...
Even before, to be honest, they're thinking, even a couple of races before. So it seems that, we joked about the other day with Checo going into the gravel in Australia, was actually a blessing for all the other teams because he had to crane the car out, and they probably got to see what was underneath that Red Bull for the first time. So. It's daft as it sounds. We know they hire all the photographers to have a look and actually, delve into what it is. But craning that one out of qualifying has probably been the best thing for the teams that's happened. So it's no coincidence we're now starting to see a lot of teams suddenly go, "Oh, we figured out how to do it on the back of it."
Yeah, I think connecting the floor to the rear wing and like getting some sort of airflow right is the secret to it, to be completely honest. And it's going to be interesting to see like how quickly other teams catch on as well, for sure.
I saw a picture the other day. I don't know if you saw it, Matt, of the flow paint on the RB19, and
it's unbelievable.
It's just
it's actually like part of the bodywork. It's perfect.
Yeah.
There's literally nothing going anywhere. And
I reckon they painted it on by hand, though, to be honest.
Maybe, yeah.
But it just looked like it. It just looked like it literally just got on and just painted it in between the lines. It's that good for what they did. And we keep saying it's not about one thing. It's not about a new rear wing. It's not about one part. It's how they've got the whole car working together with that floor. And, going back to Red Bull, they did upgrade their floor in Baku, which kind of slid under the radar a bit. They even brought an upgrade to their floor. They brought new floor edges, new floor fence to it. So even they're taking that little bit step further, and that went under the radar a bit in terms of an upgrade, but they snuck that one in. So
yeah, it's bringing the car together holistically, and I think that it's insane that like essentially Adrian Newey is a cheat code. There's no other way around it, and you can see that every single week, literally every single week. And especially with like I know obviously we talked about, Christian obviously saying let's bank points early and like, don't count your chickens or like towards like, winning the championship, especially constructors. But like seeing the fact that they're going to be bringing their engines in-house as well as of 2026. In.You has never been part of that process ever. He's never been part of a team where they've developed engines and the rest of the car itself. I know technically it's Ford, but I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that relationship sort of goes as well, because he will have oversight of pretty much everything, which is mad to think about. Like, he's never had that opportunity. It could go horribly wrong. You never know. But
he's been quite limited in terms of engines. That was one of the big falling outs they had with Renault. Renault refused to design an engine that fitted the Red Bull, and Adrian had to compromise the car to fit the engine in.
Yeah.
And, same when Honda first come on board, they had the same challenges, the same problems. So bringing it in-house will make them for sure. Ford type, I'm not too sure yet how much input Ford's going to have. It seems to be a bit varying. At first, it was only a few components. Now it kind of feels like there might be a lot more going on, to be honest, with the Ford type. It's certainly been made a big deal. It's being made to be a bit more than a few electrical components that we thought it was originally. I'd say, looking at the fact the signs have already changed at Milton Keynes, all the advertising that's gone with it, the stuff that I know Dan has been doing in America with Ford, the fact that they had Ford on the grid at Miami rather than someone to do with Honda. So yeah, it's going to be a real interesting change of regulations, like I say, to build a car which they can build around their own engine and be in charge of their own future, their own development is quite scary for it, if I'm honest.
It's massive. It really is massive. Going back very slightly as well, you touched on it, and I did actually want to ask about it. You obviously both went to Mercedes a couple of weeks ago. How on earth did that come about?
We were just invited down, so we can't talk about what we saw.
Oh yeah, no, that's not what I'm asking at all.
I'm just on the phone to Christian right now. So.
Yeah.
If I get a Red Bull one, then we know that Christian wants to put us under a bright light somewhere.
Like, what did you see?
Yeah, but no, we just asked if we wanted to go and see, what goes on, how the cars come together,
nice,
what's involved in it, more of a broadening our horizons as two people who actually contribute to a Formula One community. So we've been quite fortunate that we've managed to talk to people over the past 12 months. People who are in the sport, people who are out the sport, and we have made some friendships with a lot of people that you can't publicise because of the job they do, but actually are really great for sounding boards and having conversations with, and it works on I'd say it's a transactional relationship, but a really good relationship where they know they can trust you with certain information.
Yeah.
You can, and they know that you're not going to break that trust and create problems for them, which no one wants to see at the end of the day. But then likewise, you can get some really valuable insight and information, which gets lost in the press a lot of the time. I'll probably say the best way to describe it is it kind of gives you a good steer on what's going on, and it gives you a good direction and a vibe of what's happening with some of the teams. And it's nice to know they feel they can reach out. And
it's very frustrating at the same time, though, because
it can be very frustrating at the same time. Yeah,
you'll get certain bits of information, and you think, I just want to scream it. I just want to scream it, but you can't. Obviously, because of that, like Terry said, with that mutual respect between the two parties, you just can't.
Yeah, of course.
You mentioned the tape story, having put a tape on, and then it goes to someone else and watch for the tape. What did you learn from visiting the factory that people were like, if you understood this, you'd be a bit nicer to the engineers or the teams or the
way they are with the cost cap. And
what
we haven't found, and I'm sure Matt touched on this, right, is we as Formula One fans, we never discussed the impact the cost caps had on the staff. So before, they could move teams, they could command higher salaries, they could literally all of these things. What the cost cap has done is actually it's stumped their earning potential. It's stopped them being able to move teams freely in terms of garden leave and promotion and higher up money. It's hit them really hard. And for Formula One being the pinnacle of motor racing, to know that staff actually are financially impacted on the cost cap and not being paid probably what they deserve to be for working as hard as they are, and they're working longer hours for less money. So I think the thing we learned was that there needs to be, I think, a lot more respect for what we do, and that they're working really hard to bring these upgrades, but they can't because they've got their hands tied by a cost cap. And as fans, we don't really appreciate that. We expect them to turn up at the next race and go, right, you're going to catch Red Bull, you're going to catch Aston Martin, but it's not going to happen in this era of cost cap. But I think that's probably my biggest take on it. What about you, Matt?
Exactly, Sam. I echo what Terry's just said. You know, we were having some good conversations in terms of it stumps the growth of a colleague. And we as outsiders just looked at it as a sport, and you kind of you don't take that context out of it. So it was actually good to have them conversations, and like Terry just touched on there, people not able to move the departments, they're not able to get that career growth that they once had. You know, there's X amount of people that have left a certain team and gone to another certain team, and that's because they physically cannot move in that company.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that everyone should relook at in the cost cap rules?
100%.
Yeah, I think the wages can be included. I'm all for a cost cap for car development and all for striking that way. But I think how you run a team, it seems crazy to me that here we are talking about people who build a car are under a cost cap, yet you've got a marketing team, you've got an unlimited cost cap budget where it's not even included. So to put a show car on because it suits Formula One doesn't come under your cost cap, yet to give someone a better pay grade who potentially builds a chassis in your car, that comes under a cost cap. That to me is just crazy. And you either go all in and put everything under it and let the teams dictate what they do, or you say, Joe, what your cost cap is car development, it's on parts, it's on that side of it, not and even how much you spend on labour to accept, but not in terms of wages and capital. That's where I feel it's gone too far.
Yeah, I joke, but it even comes down to catering, which is just, it's insane, like how strict it really can be. And I mean, Ash and I talked about it before, but there are some teams who have potentially found certain ways around certain rules by setting up like the what was it called? Ash, it was like Aston Martin
some
technologies.
Some of the big teams have like Red Bull technologies, Aston Martin technologies, where I think Otmar alluded to like a couple of months back that they might be hiding costs in these kind of sub-entities. Because I know Martin Whitmarsh oversees everything at Aston Formula One. And he could say, oh, well, if we develop a car with this, ERS unit, we can kind of use that as development for the Aston car and then kind of plug and play. And there's a worry that some of the big teams are hiding costs elsewhere with these additional technology companies that they've created.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about, if you look at all the top teams, they've had a road car project running alongside, haven't they? So there's no surprise that all of the top teams have been doing this, and they've been doing it for years, to be honest, in terms of development to technology. But like you say, it's a very simplistic way of hiding it, or saying, Mercedes did it with James Allison, where he went to work on Ineos. He was still employed by Mercedes, part of his contract, but also went to work on the Ineos boat project. Now, to me, that's because they're offsetting costs as well as a personal thing for him. But you can guarantee they would have been billable hours somewhere where they went to the FIA and said, actually, 3 days a week he's working on the boat project, so he's not being paid for that. So therefore, we're not using him. Yet when he comes back, that knowledge is still there from working on the Ineos boat project, which is in the same building. You've got Aston Martin, you've got Red Bull, all the top teams do it to an extent where, Adrian Newey worked on the Valkyrie projects. And that's where their talk of the carbon fibre come from for the Red Bull with the Weave carbon fibre. That it comes from that project, which they own the rights to. We go back to Red Bull. Adrian Newey works for a consultancy firm employed by Red Bull. I mean, how crazy that we're sitting discussing where Adrian Newey himself isn't technically a Red Bull employee. He's a contractor. So again, it will be for.
I think that just sums up F1 in general, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
F1 in general has got a rule book. A team will find a loophole around a certain rule, and then the next season will rewrite that rule to stop the rule being overlooked.
But then the
problem is, and we've said this time and time again, Terry, haven't we? Where does it end?
Yeah.
Where do you physically stop with that? Because you can't just keep going, writing rules upon rules upon rules upon rules upon rules. But it's going to have to stop somewhere, isn't it?
But the thing about cost cap as well, the other interesting thing is, what's it actually protecting? Because ultimately, the cost cap was designed to protect smaller teams from going out of business. But no other sport does it. No other major sport does it. No other sport. There's an extent with teams like NFL and obviously,
Premier League.
with budgeting. But in terms of football and things like that, it's like turning around to your competitors and saying you can only spend this much on your what you're doing. And if you put it into real day terms, you've got like a supermarket. It's like walking to your rival supermarket and saying you can't spend that much on your shop. You can only spend this much now because that's what the lowest has got. And Formula One there's more money in Formula One now than there ever has been. Yeah, they're commercially the soundest they've ever been with all of the growth they're seeing. And that's not down to cost cap. That's down to all the new sponsors, all of the new, Drive to Survive fame, all of these things they've got. And surely a team would be better. Surely FIA would be better in F1 saying, here's a pot of money, which you all put into. And you know what? If you're about to go to the wall, you have to apply for that and pay that back at an interest-rated loan to stop you going to the wall, rather than letting them go to the wall. So you can always set up like a parachute to say, if you are in trouble, you come to us before you go bust. And the teams agree on it.
So I guess it would almost be like so financial fair play in football, you can only lose a certain amount of money per year, and it's like the equivalent to like 93 million over 3 years or whatever it is. I can't remember exactly. Or 30, you can only lose 37 million a year on average, or whatever it is. I don't know. But you saying maybe
and you can only spend the money that you earn.
Yes. Yeah. So are you saying maybe that might be a better approach towards cost cap sort of style thing?
Because ultimately you've got you are running a business, but I think we talk about closer racing. The top teams, Aston Martin, Mercedes, they would have shut that gap on Red Bull by now with no cost cap.
Yeah.
They would have worked overtime. They would have brought the best people in. They would have shut the wages there. Yeah. They would have literally developed around the clock to shut that down on Red Bull. And we would have closer racing and better action on track.
Yeah.
Yes, the gap might be bigger to the smaller teams, admittedly, but also that's part of being in Formula One. You've got to start somewhere and build yourself up. Red Bull, when they came in, wasn't a massive team. They built themselves up to the power they are. Christian Horner's done a great job of building them up to that.
Yeah.
Granted, Red Bull was a phenomenal investor, but actually, when they took over Stuart Racing, they weren't a big team they took over. When they come into Formula One, they found a big investor. But you've got lots of Williams who in the past were massive Formula One team who are struggling now. McLaren, look where they are. And I'm sure McLaren, sponsorship-wise, Zach Brown did a great job of getting balance in the book for McLaren in terms of where they are now financially. He could quite easily probably open up a lot more. And it's interesting that they pumped it into other Formula businesses like IndyCar, Xtreme, Formula E, because do you know what? It's surplus money that he can't spend on the Formula One team. Whereas would he have diverse that much if he could have?
It's interesting as well when you mentioned McLaren as a specific example, because I think the only other sport where they may be done worse than they had done previously is Formula E. And I think that's different because it's completely new regulations, and also technically it wasn't them; it was technically Mercedes, and they bought the team, etc., etc. But now, so far during the seasons of the races that they're actually part of, IndyCar, and then Extreme E and stuff like that, they're all doing better than they were last year.
Yeah,
funny that, and there's no cost cap in those sports. It's very interesting. Just off the top of my head.
I think the biggest gripe that I've got with the cost cap is we all understand the reason it was brought in. We all appreciate the reason that it's there. But it's almost like you've now brought a cost cap in, but certain teams have already got a head start upon everyone else anyway. So is it fair? No.
Yeah. I mean,
we've
discussed Aston Martin. So Aston Martin, for example, the new factory is built outside of the cost cap.
Yeah.
So it was agreed before the cost cap came into play. It's delayed due to COVID, various other reasons. So it's not a cost cap expenditure. But when it opens, you've got a purpose-built wind tunnel. You've got a state-of-the-art building, state-of-the-art computer system, state-of-the-art working factory. All of it built outside the cost cap. Now, if you're someone like Williams who wants to upgrade their computer systems, that could become part of a cost cap payment. So that's not fair. And there was no baseline to say, right, you're here, you're now here. It was just like, here's your cost cap, here you go. And again, should we have facilities as part of a cost cap? Or actually, should a team be able to spend what they want on facilities, what they want? If a team wants to buy their team sandwiches and pay for their dinner, do you know what? It don't bother me.
Yeah.
And if you're telling me that actually you have to shut these bits off, it just seems crazy that all these factors make it into this cost cap. And then you have all these exclusions and powertrains are separate, so you can make 5 engines and it's not part of your cost. But you can order a Greg's and it is.
Yeah, you've summed it up really well there. Yeah.
Like your pit staff who worked overtime, if you reward them or you give them a bonus or some overtime, it's it's in your cost cap. But actually, if I want to send the car down Las Vegas Strip as we discussed, that's free of charge.
Yeah, it could use some tweaking, let's say.
Definitely.
That's underplaying it.
Yeah, well, I mean, not entirely wrong. But we have actually been chatting now for an hour and 15 minutes.
Wow.
And it seems to have flown by, although it's gradually got darker and darker in the background for me. But I guess something as well we always look forward to, obviously, because it is race week. Do we have any predictions for Imola? Obviously, coming up this weekend. Any predictions whatsoever in terms of podium or race winner or anything?
Can I take the race winner? Because I think this is going to be about the easiest one.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I wonder who.
I'm going to be no, I'm not going to be controversial. It's going to be Max, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a combination of car and driver together. It doesn't matter what track you put him on and that car on at the moment. It's going to be the way it is.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Max, Checo, and then I reckon Charles Leclerc's going to get the third spot.
Okay. Matt, have you got a podium in mind for the other two drivers? Should we start with Max or?
I'm going to go Max, Leclerc, Alonso.
Okay.
Max, Leclerc, Alonso. Fingers crossed. For Leclerc. Yeah, he needs some luck, doesn't he? He needs something to go right.
I want to see the Ferrari up amongst it. I mean, that's been a big disappointment this season, to be honest.
Yeah. Ash?
I'm going to go Max, Leclerc, Sainz. I think with it being in Italy, Ferrari want to put on a show.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm thinking Max, then Checo, then Alonso. I'm just going for the say. I know it's the most boring answer in the world.
That's what we use it for, isn't it?
It's just I've got a 50% chance of being bang on just by saying that. So that's what I'm going to go with, to be completely honest with you. I think that it will be. You could even argue, I think 50-50 chance. Depending on how obviously the Merc goes, there's a 50% chance it could even be a Merc on the podium. You never know. Yeah, fingers crossed. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that is. I mean, we're all saying we're expecting it to be similar or maybe even step back. Who knows? If you look at the gain Aston Martin had when they introduced their car in Bahrain, then potentially, you could have the same one. But that's the thing. We don't know yet.
No.
I think one thing we are underestimating, like you said, Ferrari, home race.
Yeah.
We already know the amount of pressure that Charles is under.
Yeah. Yeah, I think
I'm just hoping this weekend doesn't add to that, but who knows?
Yeah, I think it's ridiculous. Like, obviously, he's crashed more times in just purely this season compared to Mick the entirety of last season. Like, that's like a worrying sort of statistic to have hanging over your head. And I know that, like, obviously Formula One drivers they read social media, they read newspapers, maybe not newspapers, but you get my point. They can read, most of them. So, I mean, like, they will know, and that will be sat in his mind somewhere that, he's crashed way too much. Maybe not that stat specifically, but it will be in his mind somewhere. So fingers crossed everything goes okay for Ferrari and especially Charles, but you just never know. Literally never know. I
think he's short on confidence. He looks like a driver who's short on confidence. He needs some good results over these next 3 races. Yeah. I kind of think Monaco's the big one for him. Yeah, with his home race, we know what's happened there in the past with him there. I think,
just think it's cursed.
Yeah, it's just cursed.
And then if he breaks that curse, what a lift that's got the potential to give to him. And over one lap, that Ferrari's just as good as the Red Bull over one lap to some degree. It might not have the race pace, but in Monaco, going around there on one lap, I fancy them for that, if I'm honest, in terms of putting on a show there. And if he can keep out the wall, that is. But, he's a driver who looks like he needs something, that's for sure, this season.
Right, you've jeered me up now. Let's back it with some confidence. We're going for a Ferrari 1-2 this weekend. I'm changing my mind. I'm changing my mind. That's it now.
Monaco, I'll go for a Ferrari 1-2.
And then, speaking of putting it in the wall in Monaco, Nick de Vries very quickly, what do you think the situation is with him? Obviously, there were some rumors over the last week, I guess, about him being replaced within the next few races around, like, even with Daniel Ricciardo, which I think spiraled out of control ridiculously. But just how much pressure is he under?
Personally, we know that Danny Rick isn't replacing.
Yeah, exactly.
Nick De Vries. But I do think he's under pressure. Go back to your point. I think the noise coming from, I say AlphaTauri, it's coming from Red Bull, isn't it? It's coming from Helmut Marko. Let's be honest about it. But talk of putting him on. I think when your videos back was putting him on a yellow card.
Not a red card.
Yeah.
Not a red card. That in itself feels like a bit of a warning shot. I think he needs some big performances. The floor upgrades is supposed to help him. It's probably not helping him that Yuki's, in and around the points. And if Yuki starts converting that into actual points with a new floor, I think Nick could be in trouble soon if he doesn't get a good performance. And there's plenty of people with Liam Lawson snapping at him who can take that seat off him. And I think the other one touched on is probably Logan Sargent's probably going to be feeling it a bit. A lot of rumours this week about him as well. So. Yeah.
I think one key point that I want to bring up here, and it's something that we talk about quite a lot on the podcast, is, and it always gets overlooked on, new drivers in new teams.
Yeah.
And how we just expect them to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
We've seen the likes of Gasly before at Red Bull. We've seen Albon at Red Bull. Just to name a few. Now, I think both of them could have come really, really good at Red Bull had they given the time to get their feet under the table. And I'm one of these that I'm backing Nick to do exactly the same, but he's got to be given the time. You can't just stick a driver in a brand new car, a brand new team around him and go, I want results. I understand where Red Bull are coming from. It's a results business. And unfortunately, he just doesn't happen that way.
We said the exact same thing like last week before. We said that I think that the Red Bull management of old, 3 or 4 years ago, he'd be gone already. But now, the more mature Red Bull management, maybe he'll see the way through the season.
I'm interested to see why you laughed when you said that.
Just under new management, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they're sick and tired of being told that they've been drivers after like 3 laps type thing. I don't know. The more mature, maybe the correct decisions, or
I still think there was talk of a sale though. So I think, at some point there was a sale talk, and I think that plays into AlphaTauri's part. So I think they were exploring the possibility. I don't think it was a realistic one, but I think they were chucking out there to see who would be interested, who they might sell it to. And I think that it's made their 2 drivers this season aren't classic Red Bull drivers. I know people say Yuki is, but he's a Honda-backed driver. And Nick obviously come from Mercedes, so they're not traditional Red Bull junior drivers in that sense. So it was quite a surprise to see him go with that combination when there was a few others available. So maybe there's a bit of that in their partnership as well.
I do have a bigger conspiracy on the old Danny Rick situation, though.
Go on then.
I think I've told you quite a few times, haven't I, Terry?
What's that?
You're not going to want him to go out to AlphaTauri, and you're going to want him to sit there in the wing waiting in the background. Should Sergio Perez need replacement?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about is this why Checo's getting zucked? Because it's like anything. If you've got someone standing over your shoulder who could do your job, even though in public, very open about, he's not there to take his seat. Checo knows he's got to perform. He's got this season and next season left in his contract. He knows that in order to keep that seat, he's going to have to perform. And if you've got that almost that spectre of Danny sat behind you, just sat there putting in the sim times, getting all this positive press, you listen to Christian talk about him and, he's almost race ready. We've almost got him back to how we had him before. Like you say, drivers read stuff, they hear stuff, don't they? So actually.
But then you also chuck in the mix that Sergio has been given that time in that car. You could say he's now got his feet under the table. Like we literally just touched on there with Nick and the like.
I mean, he's been given longer than most Red Bull second drivers, hasn't he?
Yeah, exactly. This new management, under new management, it's wiser, older. I don't know. Maybe it's the difference. Maybe they learned from seeing Albon do very well in a pretty bad Williams. And they've gone, maybe we did mess up letting him go, and Pierre's won a race. hold on a minute. So you never know. I mean, I know obviously Pierre at the time that he won the race, he was obviously still part of the Red Bull family, I guess. But it does make you think that maybe they've seen the successes of their other drivers. I mean, Carlos was a Red Bull driver at one point.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's that too. So maybe they're sort of seeing like, well, maybe we are letting go of talent a little bit too early. Stick it out maybe half a season longer and see what happens. You never know.
I also think it's due with the talent that's coming as well. You know, they talked a lot about Liam Lawson not being quite ready and almost wanting to avoid the Gasly Albon situation. So maybe it's working both ways as well, where they're actually holding it back deliberately to give them more experience in the lower categories and build them up that way rather than promote them too early and in a car that isn't competitive. Or maybe they knew that the AlphaTauri wasn't going to be that competitive this year. So again, they're protecting a new driver, a new young driver by putting this combination they've currently got in, knowing that their development is like it is. So,
yeah, could be absolutely bang on. I think that we obviously we don't fully understand exactly what goes on behind the scenes at every team at all. So, I mean, yeah, who knows?
And it's still a weird setup, isn't it, where they Red Bull choose their drivers. You know, it still strikes me as you've potentially got two teams, both opposite ends of the grid, clearly don't share development because if they do, AlphaTauri can't copy it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, it's clear to see they don't share development of the car, let's be honest. But then equally, they've got the same engines in there. And actually, how much do AlphaTauri struggle with that Honda engine compared to how Red Bull have harnessed that? And yet you've got Red Bull dictating what drivers go into there and, having the pick of it. So it is a bit of a strange setup still.
Yeah, they've got like a weird, almost like a weird monopoly over the driver market. It's such a strange position to be in for that team, or that like Red Bull as a team, not the Red Bull Racing or AlphaTauri, that the Red Bull as a whole. It's a very, very strange position to be in for sure.
Having 4 seats available to you is a lot easier than filling 2. Or well, potentially it's not 4, is it more like with reserve rules? So you've got 5, 6, haven't you? So having 5, 6 seats potentially available to bring people into that stage and being able to mix them around.
The downside to that is it's very much like a double-edged sword, though, isn't it? As we've seen. Yeah. You get given the time to come up and shine, but then you don't shine, and then you're back down to square one. It's like, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, I think that's why Pierre had to leave AlphaTauri in order to grow and blossom into a better driver, because you're never going to get another chance in that Red Bull, essentially, especially with like Danny Rick waiting in the ring. Oh my God, English, waiting in the wings.
Just to add a couple of things there. One, you've got Max in the other Red Bull seat, who is... You come up against Max, you've got to bring your A game. But this is from another podcast. This is not from me, so I'm not going to take any credit. They talked about Fernando Alonso being a driver who knows where he's the problem and where the car's the problem. So if he's driving in a certain way and the car's not quick, he's like, that's my fault because I'm going too fast or whatever. If he's driving in a certain way, it's like, actually, no, the car's the problem because it's not putting the grip down. Apparently, that's what happened with Pierre at Red Bull, is where they're like, no, the car can do it. It's your driving style and Pierre was like, no, the car can't do it. I'm going to keep driving the same way. And they came to a clash, and at that point, they're like, well, it's not going to work. And unfortunately, back to AlphaTauri you go. So I think that's just another thing, is like Max shows what the car can do. And if you're in and about, which Sergio is, that's fine. If you're not, then we'll start looking around.
Yeah, I think there's a tolerance, isn't there, on how close you've got to be. There's a famous story of Senna and the wall, isn't there, where the wall moved during the race, where he hit the wall and went back to the pits and claimed that the wall moved, and his team didn't believe him at all until they walked the track afterwards and realised that a car had actually hit the wall and the wall had moved by a couple of millimetres. And it's just crazy to know that he's driving at that pace, and just insane, especially in those days. But no data like what's available nowadays. And he was literally, that wall's moved by 2 millimetres, that's why I clipped it.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be true. So how many times we were drivers talk about something going wrong with the car, and this thing was on. No, there's not, and then 2 laps later, suddenly something happens on it. It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, you like one of the stories that springs to mind when you talk about that, it was was Kimi who said there's a crack in the chassis, and they were like, no, there's no crack. Don't know what you're on about.
Yeah.
Took it back to the factory, and they're like, Kimi, yeah, actually, hold on a minute. There was like a 2mm crack in his
it was
part.
a hairline crack, wasn't it?
Exactly where you said it
all,
was.
all weekend. All weekend they were like, no, and it was
nothing.
literally to the place, wasn't it?
Yeah, literally like within like a 3 centimeter circle radius. It's just phenomenal how tuned in some of these drivers are. I think Kimi's maybe an exception as being like a completely up there, insane levels of dedication and knowledge. I think in the same realms as like Max, Lewis, Prost, Senna, all that fun stuff. But it's still absolutely insane that you're able to go. Yep. That's an issue. I promise you it's there. But yeah. Before, if you want to, I have one more thing which I want to chat about. We have been here for an hour and a half, so if you want to give up because my English is apparently giving up, then we can. But I will tease you with the topic, which is Andretti. Do we want to end it here, or do we want to have a quick chat about Andretti?
No, I'm quite happy chatting Andretti. I think it's quite a simple topic,
Yeah, all right.
For me, they should be allowed in. They've got the money, they've got the financial backing, they've got facilities. We talk about a cost cap era.
Yeah.
Andretti have got more than enough money to hit a cost cap and stay afloat. And also, this is where Formula One politics comes into play, because it's nothing to do with the buy-in. It's nothing to do with dilution of prize money, because as we discussed, the teams are financially secure. Of course, they need the prize money, but it's not as big as a factor as it was in the past, I'd say. And what they don't want from Andretti is they don't want another team who can compete in the cost cap era. So what they don't want is they don't want them coming in and mixing it up and suddenly doing like Aston Martin, suddenly getting in amongst the podiums, getting in amongst the good results. And I think they see him as a big threat to the establishment.
I think you're right, yeah.
And but then I think we should allow it. I don't see any reason why they shouldn't be allowed in Formula One at all. And for me, if you've got the money, you could afford to buy in, you should be allowed in. Simple as that, really. We as fans, we want to see more racing, more cars, more drivers. We talk about the driver market. It's two more slots on the grid, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, we used to have 12 teams.
Yeah.
So why isn't there 12 again? I mean, 11 seems a bit.
And we're allowed to. So it's not even against the rules. Their own Concord agreement lets them go up to 12 teams. So it's ridiculous that they're even as teams stalling it. Yeah, they've even written into their own rules. They can have this many teams.
Yeah, it seems a bit stupid. Ash, what's your opinion on?
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't understand why there's gatekeeping. I think it'll bring more eyes to the sport. There's a heritage there as well with the Andretti name. I just don't understand why they're kind of kicking their heels in and saying no.
And then I presume, Matt, you're on the same wavelength.
I'm a little bit both, so I can see it from both. I can see it from both points of view. So I can see from the team's point of view, like Terry just said, why would you want to introduce another team that's going to be a threat to you? You're not. I can understand that. We would all probably do exactly the same. We were put in their team's positions. But just recent comments that Christian made as well. So Christian Horner recently made comments about where does everything go? Because we're not talking about the F1 of 10 years ago where hardly anyone ever had, like pickup trucks and different trucks for hosting different events and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot that goes into packing out a paddock this day and age.
Yeah.
So I can kind of see it from that point of view as well. Where do you put an extra team? Unless said extra team came in and took over an old team.
Yeah, there is that. I mean, you could potentially have them buy up a different team, but I don't know how many are on sale, really. None, I'd argue.
Terry.
Well,
watch this space with Haas. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I mean, there is obviously potential for Haas to sort of. I mean, they're what? I think they're the second lowest budgeted team. I think Williams were on the verge as well, so I guess Williams might have a for sale sign up, provided they keep the Williams Andretti or Andretti Williams Racing or whatever it is. You never know. So
I think Gene Haas is going to get a lot bored before we actually realise.
Yeah,
I think with Williams, though, like you say, ultimately Williams are owned by venture capitalists.
Yeah, Darlington.
So when the money dries up, their whole thing is building up a business to sell it on for a profit. That's what they do. That's their line of work. So we've heard talk of Porsche coming in for Williams.
Yeah,
there's been a lot of talk of Williams being a team which should be muted. I suppose my only downside to that is you would probably move the operation over to America, and all these people who grow potentially be out of a job. Going back to the conversation we've just been saying about cost cap and staff, that's my downside to something like that happening. Is Alpha Tauri being in Italy as well. At what point if they buy a team, you're just replacing jobs for jobs, and you're not actually bringing much to the sport. But Toto said about what do teams bring to the sport in terms of the bigger picture, but also you got to remember is, the likes of Red Bull weren't building engines before. They weren't actually, up until now, they were a customer of one of the bigger teams in terms of their engines and stuff. So they weren't bringing it. So now they're at a point where actually, Andretti can bring in. They're on about bringing in obviously GM Motors. There's even talk that they'll start off with the Alpine engine, but switch to a GM Motors engine once they've got their foot in the door. So you're potentially saying no to an engine supplier as well at the moment. We've seen Barmy in the current climate that we're doing that as a business as well. You've got someone coming in saying we'll even help build the engines, and with that Audi come in and take over a team, haven't we, at the end of the day, when all the talk was they were coming in as a new team. They haven't. They've done what we've just said. They've took over a team to keep us at 10 teams on the grid. And yeah, that seems to be okay. No one seems to be batting an eyelid that Alfa Romeo has kind of gone by the wayside because they're keeping the factory, they're keeping the facilities in place to an extent.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's I think it's interesting how Audi is allowed, but for some reason Andretti doesn't seem to be, which is just seems a very strange thing to have. I think that the only potential spanner in the works as well is obviously Andretti have been making a lot of noise. But what if you then have the Andretti application go through and they say, yep, somebody else might want to jump on that bandwagon. Let's say Porsche want to jump on that bandwagon. And then you have two new teams joining. Would that be too much, or would that actually play into other teams going, yep, sure, instead of just having one new one, let's have two at the same time?
I think you could go to two. I mean, going back to the paddock, you can dictate what facilities go in the paddock. You can, there's some pretty ginormous buildings in some of these paddocks.
Look at Austin, Jesus.
Yeah. Let's look at Miami. They split down a couple of them inside the stadium. But I think also what you got to think about is it'd be very different if one of the teams is about to go to the wall. I think so. If you've got a team in dire financial Force India style, about coming Monday morning and the door's going to be bolted shut. It'd be really interesting to see if there's the same attitude to Andretti coming in then as when there's thousands of jobs at risk and 9 teams on the grid. I think so that's probably where the cost cap's probably saved it. Going back to what we said before, actually it stopped that happening. I think it probably would have happened if we didn't have the cost cap, and they probably would have got in by now. So this is probably a downside to the cost cap in the introduction of a new team, because there isn't that what happened with Jordan, what happened with Force India, or Stuart Race and all these things where actually they're about to foreclose on it because unpaid taxes and everything else. So
I mean, look at the Lotus situation.
Yeah,
that was pretty bad.
That was giving Kimi a silly contract, though, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean that was half the issue, to be fair. But I mean, it didn't help with the rest of the issues, I guess. But it's just an insane situation. It just really is. Good to get your thoughts on Andretti, because I think that's one that typically the fans seem to be pretty aligned on, but including Andretti, is seemingly everyone wants another team to take part. It's just for some reason there seems to be, like you said, internal politics getting in the way, which is a bit of a shame.
Yeah, I think they're also waiting for the buy-in to change, aren't they? I mean, 200 million at the moment, and there's talk of it being near $1 billion apparently on the new Concord agreement, which, I mean, ironically, is divided by the teams, so you can see what the teams want to increase.
Yeah, I wonder why. Yeah,
but again, and that's what I'm saying is a buy-in, should that not go into a pot to save the teams from financial ruin? So actually, could you not put that in a sort of trust where that's the security instead of a cost cap maybe, or each team puts into it and then puts out there's lots of options where you could put some different funds. I mean, I'm sure the teams would like an extra $20 million on their bottom line, but it's not going to help them develop a car nowadays, is it? Whereas in the past it would have, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So going back to that cost cap in the past, when a team was brought in and they paid 20 million per team, that 20 million goes straight on your card, doesn't it? So, yeah, more inclined to let them in then, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. I think that obviously, if you, especially like a prime example, even from this season, is obviously Hass's. My English has really gone. We're really Jesus Christ. But Hass's tiny pit wall. Obviously, they're saying they're saving 500,000 a year just purely on shipping costs for that, and they're like, oh yeah, but that that doesn't come under the cost cap. My God. But then again, at the same time, if you're Haas and you're not even meeting the cost cap, it absolutely makes a difference.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, because it allows you to spend on it, doesn't it? Even though it might not come under it, it's freed up to do it, isn't it? So.
Yeah, it frees up some money somewhere to go to a different part of the business. So, yeah, makes sense. But yeah, all right. Well, is there anything that anyone else wants? Any other bits and pieces that anyone else has before we wrap up? I guess before my English completely goes at this point. Honestly, I don't know what it is.
Absolute blast actually being on here chatting. It's been really good, really enjoyable.
No, glad to hear you say that. I mean, like literally, like obviously we touched on like why you guys or how you guys got into sport, how you guys met, etc., etc. But like me and Ash would sit and play Warzone or like play Formula One on the Xbox or whatever, and we'd just be chatting about Formula One for like hours on end. So we thought we might as well just sit and record it and see if other people are particularly interested in the rubbish that we have to come up with. So I mean, like it's also ridiculous. I remember when we were first talking about the podcast, we were like, oh yeah, we can record for like half an hour, see how it goes. And then the first time we recorded it was like an hour and 20 minutes. And we're like, how on earth did we manage to do that?
Ours are slowly creeping up, aren't they?
Exactly. Yeah.
They are. We've been trying to keep them.
You just can't though. Once you get into that little narrow road, you just go for it, don't you? But it's good fun.
There's so many topics we haven't covered. We haven't talked more about Ferrari, the Alpines.
You need another podcast session for the Ferrari.
You have to come invite us back on so we can fill in the rest of it.
Yeah, we should definitely have you guys back on. I think we could probably have you guys back on. Like maybe because we've talked about the triple header quite a bit. You're more than welcome to come back on after the triple header, and we can follow up on half of these topics.
She was right.
Follow you on the predictions.
Yeah. But alrighty then. We will wrap it up there. So just very quickly, if you've managed to make it all the way through this 1 hour, 41 minutes and 32 seconds, why on earth haven't you subscribed or rated the podcast? That is criminal from you. So please do that before you disappear. But thank you very much for listening, and we will be back as always next week. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.